What do you think? Could this guy eat an orca? Hey, how about asking me that?
Well, can he?
In 2008, scientists were conducting a study to find out who or what killed large numbers of harbor seals in the Arctic archipelago of Svalbard. In their search, they dissected the body of a Greenland shark. It was the prime suspect, but found something weird in its stomach, the jawbone of a young polar bear. The scientists were so shocked they burst out laughing.
It was probably a nervous laugh, but you can understand them.
The polar bear is the apex predator. That is, it's at the top of the food chain because no one dares hunt such an animal. The polar bear is too big, strong, and ferocious. Now try to imagine this: the world's largest land predator against a fast, deadly shark with razor-sharp teeth. This is a real clash of the titans. However, experts remain uncertain as to whether the shark could have killed the polar bear or if it discovered the bear already deceased, with the animal dying due to other causes. But regardless, watch out, polar bear. It seems like they're going to dethrone you. I mean, in theory, a shark is strong enough to take on a polar bear, especially if it's a young one. However, there's another animal that can accomplish the same feat, but don't count the bear out just yet, as it won't back down without a struggle and might even consider making the enemy its next meal. This animal happens to be an orca. Let me make it clear right away. So far, researchers have no confirmation that polar bears and orcas have ever had a predator-prey relationship. Although both species live in the same environment, they rarely hunt each other. But it's worth remembering that both species are apex predators and are also good, opportunistic hunters by nature, which means that most likely orcas and polar bears will consider each other as a potential food source, if the opportunity presents itself, of course. It's hard to find videos or photos of polar bears eating orcas, but scientists are confident that bears always dine on orcas when they stumble across them. The most probable scenario looks like this. A polar bear will find a dead orca and decide to eat it, because that's the way polar bears are. If they see prey, even when it's dead, they never say no to it, especially if it's this kind of food. An adult male orca can weigh up to 6 tons, which means it has enough meat to feed even 20 polar bears at a time. Like I said, if a bear were to come across an orca, the orca would probably already be dead. But when it comes to hunting, do bears have a shot? Absolutely. Even though we currently have only circumstantial evidence to rely on? In reality, polar bears don't mind eating carrion. Take a look at this. From a distance, it appears as though there's a herd of sheep grazing on a hillside. However, as you get closer, you realize that they are not sheep at all. On the remote Wrangel Island, hundreds of polar bears have gathered by the shore to feast on a whale carcass. This extraordinary sight was witnessed by tourists on an expedition through Arctic waters. In total, the expedition members counted over 150 polar bears.
And later, the island authorities even claimed there were 230 bears.
And those were bears of different ages and sexes, with the larger males feeding with their mothers and their cubs. It's a unique situation. Because this is what happens when two polar bears meet. They're territorial, aggressive animals that keep to themselves. However, for the sake of a hearty meal like a whale, they're willing to make a temporary truce. Something similar but on a smaller scale would have to be seen next to the corpse of an orca. However, orcas will hardly ever become a main dish on the polar bear menu, so polar bears don't really count on them. So far, there are no recorded cases of one predator hunting the other, but that could change. Over the past 50 years, at a clearly accelerating rate, 1/3 of the Arctic sea ice cover has melted, and more open sea is appearing in the summer months, which means polar bears are losing their home in real time. At the same time, scientists have begun to notice ever-increasing numbers of orcas in previously inaccessible Arctic waters during the summer months. The polar bear world is shrinking, while the orca world is growing. Polar bears, due to lack of food, have even begun to catch fish in rivers, just like their brown and black relatives. Turns out that the habitats of these two predators are increasingly overlapping. This implies that we might be on the verge of seeing the first accounts of polar bears actually hunting orcas. especially considering that orcas occasionally find themselves in vulnerable situations. Hudson Bay is an inland sea with only 2 exits, both to the north. Most often, the bay is completely frozen from mid-November to mid-July. Orcas usually live in the open ocean, but in recent years they've been entering the bay in the summer in search of prey. Naturally, there's no ice at this time, and nothing stops orcas from hunting, for example, narwhals. The problems start later, when the orcas head for the exit of the bay. But they do it too late.
Ice brings about 2 immediate threats along: a lack of air and a scarcity of food.
Orcas need to surface to breathe, but all the water is covered in a thick layer of ice. This is why in recent years, information about stranded orcas can often be found online. Areas of ice-free water shrink, and the orcas follow them. Eventually, whole pods of desperate orcas try to breathe through a small opening, and then it closes. People are worried about the orcas and try to help them, but polar bears could also benefit from this. Just imagine a whole bunch of orcas forced to constantly come up to a single opening in the ice. The perfect place to hunt. Especially since polar bears already know how it works. They hunt white-beaked dolphins in Svalbard, preferring the ones stuck in the ice. On April 23, 2014, people were able to capture one of the cases of such predation. These dolphins are frequent guests in Svalbard waters in the summer, but are not usually seen in early spring. Scientists assume that the dolphins were trapped in the ice due to strong northerly winds the day before and may have died when they were forced to surface. Just like with the orcas, they were just trying to get some air but died, and the bears took advantage of that. Also, here's a fact for you. Polar bears are great at hunting beluga whales. Back in the 1980s, researchers saw bears in the Canadian Arctic hunting beluga calves near the coast of Somerset Island. Today, we have overwhelming evidence that this kind of hunting happens all the time. That is, polar bears see nothing crazy about catching and eating a beluga whale. That's just an ordinary Tuesday for them.
Here I come. Oh, here I come. Oh.
Some experts, however, claim that they started doing it because of climate change. Others, however, believe that beluga whales, especially their calves, have always been a part of the polar bear's diet. It's just that science just didn't have enough evidence before. In any case, all this means that an orca may well become common prey for the polar bear. Yes, orcas are much larger and likely more dangerous, but bears can consider their calves prey. Why not? However, the interactions with beluga whales and stories about dolphins and ice are not the only factors leading us to speculate that orcas might become part of the polar bear's diet. The world is changing. Not too long ago, they captured footage of a polar bear hunting and eating a reindeer. What's the big deal, you might wonder? The thing is, this has never been fully caught on camera before. Certainly there have been stories, but there's a great difference between stories and a well-documented process from beginning to end. The polar bear slowly crept up on the herd before attacking a male reindeer that had darted into nearby waters in an attempt to evade the attack. However, the predator followed him, and polar bears can reach speeds of up to 25 miles per hour on land and 6 miles in the water. It finally sank its claws into its prey about 80 feet from the shore. A long struggle ensued, during which the reindeer repeatedly submerged and finally gave up. The bear proceeded to the meal. But what's truly captivating is that if a polar bear manages to successfully hunt down an orca, it knows what to do with the spoils of that hunt. Indeed, 6 tons of meat is no small amount, and it'd be impossible for even a very large and insatiable male bear to consume such a massive quantity. However, polar bears seem to possess an evolutionary adaptation for such situations. They invented larders. You know how squirrels hide nuts? Well, polar bears do pretty much the same thing, burying their prey in the snow. This behavior is rare, but it does happen. 19 cases are known to date. Whether they use larders or not depends on the prey. When it comes to a small snack like a baby seal, the polar bear will devour it in one sitting. There's no need to hide it away. However, if the prey is large, such as an adult ringed seal, part of a whale,
Or an orca,
the bear may cover it with snow and guard it until it's eaten. According to researchers, this prevents theft by other bears or scavengers. A bloody carcass is pretty easy to spot against a white background, but if you cover it with snow, bears have even been known to bury the same prey over and over again when they couldn't finish eating it. What do you do if there's no snow? You can use dry grass to cover the food. Polar bears are known to practice this as well. They are actually remarkably intelligent creatures. If orcas become a part of the polar bear's diet, they might also hold the key to their survival. Let me explain what I mean. Polar bears split off from brown bears 152,000 years ago. That means they clearly made it through several significant warm eras. But how did they do it? And more importantly, can they do that again? Researchers believe that polar bears survived by switching to a different type of food. They became scavengers, hunting fewer seals and seeking out large marine mammals like whales. Clearly, they can't jump into the water to chase whales, but they were regularly washed up on beaches in some Arctic lands. This was probably enough to help polar bears during previous interglacial periods. Additionally, polar bears have a unique dietary requirement. They need to consume a significant amount of fat. I mean, a lot.
Pure grease on a paper plate.
It gives them enough energy to keep warm and move around a lot, constantly on the lookout for new food. That's why whales are just a perfect meal for them. They're covered in a thick layer of fat.
It can make up 40% of their weight.
Orcas may not be as big as whales, but they have plenty of body fat. So if polar bears start hunting orcas, it may well help them survive the next warming. But guess what? A lot of scientists are saying that the polar bear population is declining. I think Steve and I have already brought it up, and based on today's video, let's just say things are not looking good. But relatively recent research from 5 years ago has shown the situation is not as dire as we thought. Scientists have recently carried out a comprehensive evaluation of the polar bear population in the Chukchi Sea region between Russia and Alaska. To their astonishment, the bears are actually doing quite well. The study indicates that the population is robust, steady, and consists of approximately 3,000 bears. Although this is only one population that's been lucky with its habitat, there are lots and lots of seals there. But amidst the constant worries about endangered animals, even this news is really heartening. Glittering poo. Scientists are turning polar bears into fairies. Well, sort of. And thankfully, only in zoos so far. Researchers need poop samples from polar bears, but it becomes tricky to identify which waste belongs to which bear when multiple bears are together in one enclosure. Since bears cannot be directed to specific spots, a clever method has been devised. The bears are given a small amount of harmless glitter in their diet, which passes through their digestive system and, marks their poop. It's a truly ingenious idea. Salmon lured by the bear. Some people think fish goes well with beer, but as it turns out, the fish itself also loves beer. In Oregon, they're going to add beer yeast to the water of a salmon hatchery so the fish remember the smell. Then, when the fish are released, they can return to the exact same spot when it's time to breed. Salmon, in general, have a great sense of smell. It's what helps them return to the spawning grounds where they were born. So far, no one knows exactly what that smell is. Most likely, it's some combination of mineral and biological signals such as characteristic metals and the scents of their relatives.
What memories do you have of your childhood home?
Salmon raised in a hatchery form a connection between their birthplace and a particular kind of beer. There used to be problems with certain fish not returning, but seriously, who could resist swimming towards a place that smells like beer? Polite robber. In the state of California, a gunman robbed a man and then apologized to him. Guess he kinda felt guilty? The robber first approached the man with a gun in hand and demanded cash, but the victim only had his cell phone and a credit card with him, so they had to go to the ATM. Which already sounds a bit absurd, but still. The criminal forced the man to withdraw a small amount of money from the card, then drove him back in his car and let him go, taking his money and smartphone. He apologized for the robbery and promised to return the smartphone the next day. To stay in touch, the robber asked for the victim's contacts, and the victim gave him his social network login.
You know what? Forget about the money. Everybody grab a broom. We are straightening this place up.
I have so many questions for this guy, and not a single answer.
600 nights for the price of one. It sounds like a modern version of some fairy tale, but it's actually a real story about a man named Ankush Dutta. One day, he booked a room at the famous Roseate House Hotel in Delhi and was supposed to leave the next day, but then something went wrong and the man stayed at the hotel continuously for almost a year and a half without paying a single penny for his stay, food, drinks, or any other services he used. How exactly did the man manage to pull off this feat? Deception? It's unclear, But the hotel has already filed a complaint against one of its employees, whom the management suspects of working together with the mystery guest. The owners also claim the losses for the 603 nights Ankush Duda secretly spent in the hotel totaled $70,000. And on the one hand, of course, that's a violation of the law. You can't do that.
But on the other hand, I'm very curious how he pulled that off.
See you later.